"Don't touch me. I'm dirty, useless, shameful," she cried, but the human held her like she was precious. The rain started just after cycle shift, as it always did in Sector Agrodome 31. Thick, oily droplets hammering the transparent dome with a sound like distant artillery. From inside the observation corridors, the world below shimmered in gray static. Steam rising from feed vents, slurry sluicing through drain grates, and the low groans of overworked climate pumps. Dr. Tom Renner descended alone. The lifts had stopped working 2 months ago. He didn't bother submitting another repair request. Management had stopped responding to his logs after the first few weeks. These days, if something broke in the pit, it stayed broken. He trudged down the maintenance stairs, each step echoing against steel. By the time he reached the livestock trench, the reek hit him like a slap. Chemical rot mixed with ammonia and the sour stench of animal waste. The floor sloshed underfoot, ankle-deep with runoff. A stagnant, stinking mixture of biofeed, feces, and recycled condensation. The pigs barely noticed him as he passed. Technically, he wasn't supposed to be down here. Behavioral analysts were assigned to the upper decks. Clinical, removed, insulated. He used to wear lab coats. Now he wore rubber waders and patched synth fiber. The pen's far end was his target, a motion monitor that had been screaming for hours. At first, he thought the problem was mechanical, but when he rounded the last feed tank, he stopped cold. There, beneath the nutrient pipe, lay something that should not have been there. A shape, humanoid, still. He blinked, uncertain. For a breath, he thought it might be a discarded biomodel, a meat drone or damaged servitor. But then the shape moved, slowly, painfully. A pig nudged it, a her with a snort. Another sniffed at her side. She didn't react, not until the third one tried to nip at her bare arm. She flinched. That's when he saw her eyes. They were open, wide, a strange violet gold that shimmered beneath the filth caked over her face. Her skin, where visible, was a pale ocean blue, streaked with darker patches, where mud and waste clung. And her hair, what remained of it beneath the sludge, was a shocking red, vibrant even under layers of grime. Tangled strands stuck to her cheek like bloodstained wires. She met his gaze and she spoke. "Don't touch me. I'm dirty, useless, shameful," she cried. Her voice cracked, raw with something deeper than cold or hunger. It wasn't just despair. It was belief. Tom froze. For a long moment, he didn't move, didn't breathe. He had heard those words before. Not those exact ones, but close. Years ago, on Virella Prime. The girl behind the reinforced glass had said, "It doesn't matter anymore. I'm just waste." And he had watched. Had logged her withdrawal as typical adaptive regression. She starved herself to death 3 meters from where he sat, scribbling notes. Her death killed his reputation. But worse, it killed something else inside him. This girl, no, this alien woman, slumped in mud and misery, should not have looked at him that way, like she expected pain, like kindness would be a violation. A living thing shouldn't fear another's touch like that, he thought bitterly. Not from someone shaped like her. He stepped forward through the sludge. She shrank back against the pipe, too weak to crawl, her knees pulled tight to her chest. Her breathing hitched, fast and shallow, as if even his approach hurt her. Tom reached slowly to unfasten his outer jacket. The fabric was soaked from dome runoff, but it was warmer than nothing. He didn't speak, didn't dare, just knelt and eased the coat around her trembling shoulders. She gasped, more out of shock than pain. Up close, her condition was worse than he'd imagined. Skin peeled around her elbows and ribs. Her fingernails were cracked, one torn, bloody. Her body stank of fear and waste and old wounds. She looked like she hadn't eaten in days. Yet there was something stubborn in her eyes. She wasn't unconscious. She wasn't broken, just buried. The pigs grunted nearby, restless. He pulled a cloth from his belt pouch and gently wiped a streak of mud from her face. Her skin shimmered faintly, silver flecked in the low light. He took a breath and kept wiping. She didn't stop him. She just stared. "You think I deserve this?" she rasped, eyeing the protein bar he pulled from his side kit. Her lips were dry, cracked open. She didn't reach for it. He didn't answer right away. Just broke the seal, tore it in half, and offered the first piece. "Everyone deserves to eat," he said softly. Her fingers trembled as she took it. She didn't bring it to her mouth, just held it, staring, like she might not know what to do with it anymore. I'm not, I'm not a person," she whispered. Tom's voice was firmer this time. "You're not livestock." That made her blink, like something in her fractured logic couldn't reconcile the sentence. A few seconds passed. She didn't cry, but her mouth worked, trying to form words she hadn't said in a long time. He shifted, one hand cradling her back as he lifted her. She was frighteningly light. No protest, no resistance, just tense silence. The dome groaned above them as pressure cycled. He carried her to the raised feed platform where the muck thinned to a shallow crust. There he laid her down gently, propping her against a dry crate. He wrapped the jacket tighter, his breath visible in the recycled chill. The pigs milled below, disinterested now. He crouched beside her again, watching, waiting. Her hand gripped the protein bar like a tether. She didn't eat, not yet, but she didn't throw it away either. That was something. For now he could stay, and she didn't tell him to go. The lift groaned as it rose through the vertical shaft, dim lights flickering overhead like dying stars. Tom leaned back against the cold panel, trying to ignore the metallic creaks beneath his boots. His arms ached, not from the weight. She was light, too light, but from how tightly she curled into herself, as if any loosening might make her disappear. She hadn't spoken since the slurry pit. Not a word, not a sound. Her breath warmed a spot against his chest, and that was the only proof she hadn't gone catatonic. He tried not to think about the smell. What clung to her skin, what had soaked into her hair, not because it disgusted him, but because it said too much about how long she'd been down there. The lift hissed open. Sector 31's upper corridor welcomed them with flickering wall panels and the low hum of strained ventilation. He stepped out into the stale light, boots squelching faintly. Vera stirred in his arms, a tiny hitch in her breath. Whether it was pain, fear, or something else, he couldn't tell. He kept walking. His quarters weren't far, just a repurposed overseer's alcove with enough room for a cot, a folding table, and a wash station that whined when used too often. No windows, no surveillance. He preferred it that way. As the door slid shut behind them, sealing the noise and stink of the dome outside, she finally lifted her head, just enough to glance around. He watched her eyes move, one wall then another, the blanket, the cot, the heater in the corner. Her breathing changed, shorter now, distrustful. "This is my space," Tom said gently. "No one else comes in here. There are no cams, no monitors, just me." He eased her down onto the cot. She tensed when the mattress dipped beneath her, clutching the coat closer. Tom backed away. "I need to start the wash cycle," he said, gesturing to the wall unit. "You've got open skin. The sooner we clean it, the better." She didn't answer, just kept watching him like a cornered animal. The compact wash chamber let out a soft chime as the sterilization loop engaged. Warm steam hissed out in threads, mixing with the stale room air. He turned to her again. "It won't hurt," he said. "It's just warm water and soap. You can keep the door closed. I won't look." Still nothing. Tom crouched to her eye level, choosing his words carefully. "You don't have to trust me, but your body needs help. You're freezing, and that sludge you were lying in, it wasn't just filth. It's loaded with rot bacteria and trace acids. You'll get sick." A pause, then movement. Small, barely noticeable. But her hands shifted. He reached out his own, slowly, openly, and after a moment, she placed hers into his palm. Her skin was cold, clammy, but she let him lead her toward the stall. She hesitated in front of it, blinking against the rising steam. Tom stepped aside and gave her space. "I'll sit just here," he said, "right where you can see me." He turned away and sat on the floor, back to the wash unit. Behind the metal door, he heard the soft rush of water, then the low, uneven rhythm of movement. A cloth brushing skin, a quiet hiss as she turned the nozzle. He closed his eyes. Every sound from behind that door hit him like a slow beat, each one chipping away at the image of her, in that mud, her voice shaking with that terrible sentence. "Don't touch me. I'm dirty, useless, shameful. How many times had she been taught that? The wash stopped. He didn't look. A minute later, she stepped out, wrapped in one of his old thermal blankets, her red hair wet and clinging to her shoulders. She stood uncertainly, watching him. Not like before, not like prey, like someone unsure what came next. Her skin was a soft, muted blue under the pale light, almost silver in places. Freckles spotted her collarbone in faint constellations. But what caught him most were the scars. Thin, symmetrical, clinical, most of them horizontal, none accidental. He got to his feet. "You can have the cot," he said. "I'll take the floor." Her voice came so quietly it almost got lost in the hum of the heater. "You didn't report me." Tom stopped, met her eyes. "No." "Why?" He didn't deflect, didn't lie. "Because no one reported me when they should have, and a girl died because of it." She didn't ask more. He gestured again to the cot. "You can rest. I have extra food if—" "No." The word was soft, not refusal, just resignation. She didn't want anything more. Not yet. She sat. Her legs trembled slightly. She pulled the blanket tighter, curling into herself like a child trying to disappear. He turned the lights down, settled on the floor, back against the cot frame, close enough to hear her breathing, not close enough to crowd her. 10 minutes passed, maybe 20, then a whisper. "I used to be called Vera." He didn't speak for a long moment, just let the name settle into the air between them. Then softly, "Vera, you're safe here." I promise. She didn't answer. But when he leaned back and closed his eyes, he felt her shift on the cot. The blanket rustled and she didn't cry. She just breathed, steady, quiet, alive. The next morning broke not with light, but with a dull hum, an alert from the dome's internal systems pulsing low and insistent through the walls. Tom sat up from the floor, groggy, muscles stiff. The heater had cycled off sometime in the night, leaving the room just a few degrees above uncomfortable. Vera was still on the cot, curled tight, blanket drawn to her chin, her damp red hair splayed across the fabric like spilled paint. She hadn't moved much, but her breathing had changed, steadier, deeper. He let himself breathe too. Quietly he stood, adjusting the heat coils before moving to the sink. He filled a kettle, set it on the induction plate, and pulled a ration tin from the storage drawer. Breakfast would be basic, rehydrated broth and nutrient paste. But it was warm, reliable, human. He opened a second packet. The sound of boiling water must have stirred her. She sat up slowly, wincing. Her fingers clutched the blanket tighter around her chest. Her eyes met his for half a second, then dropped. "I didn't mean to sleep," she murmured, voice scratchy. "That's what bodies do when they're safe," Tom said, not turning. I didn't think I could anymore." He poured hot water into 2 cups. Steam curled between them, carrying the scent of artificial herb and salt. He offered her one. Vera stared at it for a long time before taking it. Her fingers trembled. She tried to sip and nearly choked on the heat. Tom reached out instinctively, but stopped just short of touching her. "I'm okay," she said quickly, swallowing hard. She wasn't, but she was trying. He sat across from her, holding his own cup. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It just was. "You said your name is Vira," he said gently. A nod. "Can I ask how you ended up down there?" She blinked slowly, then set her cup aside, hands wrapped tight around her knees. "There was a shipment. I wasn't on the manifest, but I was in one of the medical carriers. I overheard them. They weren't going to treat me, just repurpose." Tom's chest tightened. "Repurpose?" he repeated softly. "For collagen, nutrient slurry. I wasn't viable for reproductive contracts anymore, so they classified me as biological waste." The words came out flat, practiced, like she'd said them before, maybe to herself, maybe to others who stopped listening after the first sentence. "I escaped through a maintenance duct, crawled until I found an air shaft, ended up in the livestock vents." Tom didn't interrupt. He let her tell it. "They don't check down there. No one looks too closely at pigs." She gave a weak laugh. It didn't reach her eyes. "I figured If I didn't have value, I might as well live where the things without value live. He wanted to say something, something definitive, something healing, but platitudes would only sound hollow. Instead, he asked, "How long were you down there?" She shook her head. "Time blurs when you're hiding. Days at least. Maybe more." Tom looked at her again, really looked. She was still too thin, too pale, but alive. Against all odds, alive. "I used to be an observer," he said suddenly. "Watched trauma subjects through one-way glass. Took notes. I thought if I understood enough, it would mean something." Vera didn't speak, but her gaze met his. "There was a girl once," he continued, "Virulin. She was rescued from a cult. Wouldn't eat, wouldn't speak. I logged her behavior as standard post-trauma silence. She died within a week." Silence fell again, heavier this time. "I didn't intervene," he added. "I was trained not to interfere, not unless metrics indicated imminent failure." Vera's voice was soft. "But this time, you did." He nodded. Her fingers loosened slightly from the blanket. Just enough. The heater ticked in the background, the only sound for a long moment. Then Vira asked, "Do humans believe in second value?" He frowned gently. "You mean second chances? Number, not redemption. I mean, if someone fails at what they were made for, is there still use?" The question was so direct it startled him. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "People aren't machines, Vira. You weren't made for something. You were born. That's different." She looked away, but her lips twitched, like a smile almost formed and then fled. "I don't know what to do now," she said. "I was only ever trained for one thing." "You don't have to decide that now," Tom said. "Right now you eat, rest, heal." She nodded faintly. "And then? When you're ready, we'll figure it out." Another long pause. Then, without looking at him, she asked, "Do you think I'll ever stop feeling like waste?" He didn't answer with words. Instead, he reached across the space between them, slowly, visibly, and placed one hand over hers. She flinched, but didn't pull away. And that, Tom knew, was more answer than any sentence could give. The hum of the dome's filtration system had settled into a low rhythm, steady enough that Tom almost forgot it was artificial. Outside, the world moved in cycles. Protein synthesis, livestock discharge, rain programmed to fall like clockwork through a cracked atmosphere grid. But inside his quarters, time stretched in small, careful moments. Steam rising from two mugs, bare feet on warmed metal floors, silence that no longer felt dangerous. Vira sat on the cot, knees drawn to her chest, wrapped in one of his old shirts. The fabric was too big, sleeves hanging past her fingers, but she'd chosen it herself. Tom pretended not to notice when she'd rummaged through the drawer, pretended not to see her pause when she brushed her fingers across clean cotton like it might turn to ash. They hadn't spoken much since breakfast. Not out of awkwardness, just because neither of them wanted to rush what was forming between them. Trust, like healing, didn't bloom under pressure. Now, in the soft half-light of evening, Tom sat on the floor nearby, cleaning a sensor module with quiet precision. Vira watched him in silence. She hadn't asked what he was doing. She just liked watching him do it. Hands steady, movements purposeful, like fixing broken things was part of who he was. "You weren't always here," she said suddenly. Tom glanced up. Her voice wasn't accusatory, just curious, and maybe a little brave. "No," he said. "I wasn't." She nodded slowly. "What did you do before this?" He took a breath, setting the sensor aside. "I was a behavioral trauma analyst, stationed at the Aegis Center on Varela Prime." "That's a medical colony," she said. "High level." "Was," Tom replied. "I specialized in nonverbal trauma responses. Victims of war, genetic cults, memory fragmentation. I watched, recorded, documented." Vira tilted her head. "You studied pain." "I measured it," he said, "without touching it." She was quiet for a long time. Then, "And then?" "There was a girl," Tom said. "Young, virulent, rescued from a biogenic sect. Her DNA had been rewritten dozens of times. Scrambled emotional regulation, light sensitivity, Complete tactile aversion. She didn't speak? She didn't eat, Tom said. Didn't move much. She just sat behind the mirror, watched us with eyes that didn't blink enough. I thought I understood what she was doing. I categorized her response patterns. I logged them. And, he met Vira's eyes, she starved herself, 3 meters from me. I was on shift the whole time. She died because I thought watching was enough. Vera didn't flinch. She didn't look away. That's why you didn't report me, she said. Because this time, you didn't stay behind the mirror. He nodded. I was promoted for what I didn't do, then quietly dismissed once the PR risk caught up. Now I fix livestock sensors. Silence again. But not a painful one. More like a pause between two people who understood the weight of what had just been shared. Then softly she said, "Do you want to know what I was supposed to be?" Tom didn't move. "Only if you want to tell me." She stood, walked slowly to the heater, warming her hands. Her voice came steady, but stripped raw. "I was 4 Virene A, registered to Lorellan Reproduction Cast. Born on a dome ring station near Naxer Drift. Assigned breeder class at 3 weeks based on hormone sequencing and hip width. My early training was silence, posture, obedience. Nothing verbal, nothing expressive." Tom felt his jaw tighten, but he didn't interrupt. "At 13, I was designated for off-world pairing. At 17, sent to a contract clinic on Aerith 9. But my uterine wall showed instability during pre-bonding scans. No one told me. They just classified me non-viable and flagged me for redirection." "Redirection," Tom echoed. The word tasted like poison. "They kept me sedated, but I woke up during a transport scan. 2 techs were talking. One said I'd be easier to process if I died during sleep. They didn't know I was listening. I crawled out of the container bay and hid in a maintenance shaft. There was a livestock ship docked for resupply. I slipped aboard. Then I slipped into the sludge." She turned back toward him. Her eyes weren't glassy. They were sharp, awake. "I stopped thinking of myself as a person. It made it easier. You can't mourn what isn't supposed to exist." Tom stood slowly. "I'm sorry," he said, "for all of it." "I'm not telling you for pity," Vira said. "I just don't want you to think I was born in that pit. I had a name. They just made me forget it." "You remembered it," he said. She looked at him for a long moment, then sat back on the cot. This time when she leaned back, she didn't curl into herself. She stretched her legs out slowly, like someone trying on comfort for the first time. Tom sat beside her, close but not touching. He didn't need to. The air between them was full of something heavier and warmer than silence. "I used to think I couldn't feel anything anymore," she said. "Not fear, not hope, just survival." "And now?" he asked. Vera hesitated. "I think I'm afraid again," she said, "but not in a bad way. Like, if I let myself hope, I might have something to lose." He looked at her, her blue skin, her red hair, her hands now resting calmly on her lap. He didn't reach for her, but he whispered, "Then let's be careful with it. Slow." She nodded, and then she leaned against him. No flinch, no tension, just warmth, just closeness. And for the first time, not because she needed protection, but because she chose it. The artificial night settled over Sector 31, like a lid sealing in stale air and unspoken truths. In Tom's quarters, the recycled warmth from the wall heater buzzed steadily, casting a soft amber glow over the compact room. Outside, the inspection teams had passed. The threat had ended, for now. But neither Vira nor Tom returned to their old positions in the room. Something had shifted. After emerging from the hidden storage panel, Vera had not recoiled. She hadn't rushed to retreat or silence herself. She had simply walked into the open with her head high and her expression calm, and Tom had looked at her like she wasn't someone who had hidden, but someone who had endured. Now she sat at the edge of the cot, bare feet grazing the warm floor. The oversized shirt she wore had slipped off one shoulder, exposing the soft curve of her collarbone, where a faint scar traced a memory best left unspoken. Her hair, still damp from the recycled humidity of the crawl space, clung to her cheek. Tom knelt in front of her and placed a warm drink in her hand. Sweet, spiced, and earthy. The kind of thing you didn't rush. He didn't speak as he sat beside her, his shoulder brushing hers in silence. It was the kind of touch neither of them flinched from anymore. She took a sip, then another, then set the cup down. You stayed by the panel the entire time, she said. Yeah. You didn't run. I didn't want to. She looked at him then. Not just glanced, looked. Really saw him. A man who'd once watched someone die because he was too scared to act. A man who now risked everything, quietly and without fanfare. I'm not used to people staying, she said, especially when it gets dangerous. You're not dangerous, Tom said gently. You're real. That's different. Her breath caught. I don't know what to do with that, she admitted. Being wanted, being safe. You don't have to do anything with it, he said. Just be here. But I want to stay. She paused. Her voice dropped. I want to be touched. Not because it's expected. Not because I'm afraid to say no, but because I want it. Tom turned to face her fully, heart thudding once, hard. You sure? She nodded, trembling. Yes. He didn't reach for her immediately. He waited, and when she leaned into him, pressed her lips softly to his, he met her halfway, careful, steady, present. The kiss was slow. No rush, no hunger, just connection. Her hands came up to cup his face, uncertain, but growing bolder with each breath. He kissed her back with a tenderness that made her shiver, not from fear, but from the unfamiliarity of being cherished. They moved to the cot together. Clothes came off, not hastily, but deliberately, like shedding old skins. Each layer removed was a wall lowered, a scar acknowledged and not judged. Tom took his time. Every touch asked permission. Every kiss was an answer. He memorized the constellation of silver freckles across her chest, the soft blue glow of her skin in the dark, the way her breath hitched when he whispered her name, not as a question, but as an offering. Vera held on to him with a desperation that wasn't fear, but release. She gasped, sighed, arched, but never recoiled. And when they finally came together, it wasn't to erase what had been. It was to write something new. She cried, just a little. He didn't ask why. Later, tangled in blankets, she lay on her side, watching him. One hand rested over his heart, fingers splayed like she was learning its rhythm. I never knew I could feel this, she whispered. You can. I never thought I'd want to. But you do. And you, she hesitated. You're not scared of what I was. No, he said simply, because what you are now is everything. She didn't reply. She kissed his shoulder, curled into him, and finally slept without flinching. And Tom lay awake for a long while, not because he was afraid, but because he couldn't stop smiling. She had chosen him, and he'd chosen her back, not as a rescue, not as a promise, but as home. It was sometime after midnight when Vera stirred beneath the blanket. The hum of the dome had quieted, leaving only the soft whir of the heater and the rhythmic pulse of the emergency lights outside the frosted window. She blinked, eyes adjusting to the dark, and reached across the cot. Tom was there, awake. He lay on his side facing her, his expression calm but unreadable. You didn't sleep, she whispered. I didn't want to, he said. Not while you were still trying to come back to yourself. She looked down at their tangled hands, at the simple miracle of warmth between fingers that weren't shaking anymore. I feel like I'm still inside something, she murmured. Like my skin fits better now, but I don't trust it. He didn't try to soothe her with empty words. He let her feel it, let her own it. I know the feeling, he said quietly. After the girl on Varela died, I'd sit in empty rooms just to feel the silence, because it didn't accuse me. Her gaze flicked up to his. But it didn't forgive you either. He nodded. Vira sat up slowly. The blanket fell from her shoulder, revealing skin faintly glowing in the dark. Her hair tumbled over her back, damp with sweat and something more vulnerable. You didn't leave when you had the chance, she said. I won't, Tom replied. She watched him a moment longer, then reached out and touched his chest over the steady rhythm of his heart. I want this, she said, voice steady, Not out of gratitude, not because I'm afraid of being alone. I want it because you're the first thing that's ever felt real. She leaned down and kissed him. Not tentative, not shy. It was a kiss born from understanding, not uncertainty. He sat up, pulled her into his lap gently, letting her settle against him. They stayed like that for a long time, her face tucked into the curve of his neck, his hand moving slowly up her spine, memorizing each vertebra as if mapping her for the first time. Their bodies spoke the language of permission, not possession. Vira kissed his throat, his jaw, his shoulder. Each time was a question. Tom answered with touch, with closeness, with the unshakable patience of someone who knew exactly what it meant to be trusted again after failing to deserve it. They made love quietly. There was no rush, no spectacle, just breath and skin and the miracle of presence. Vera let herself feel it, fully. The weight of his hands on her hips, the tremble in her own voice when she whispered his name. Not because she needed help, but because she had found something worth calling. He met her in every moment, matched her movements with reverence, and when her body trembled, not from fear, but from the kind of release that unknots things inside the soul, he kissed her temple and held her like something he meant to protect, not keep. Later they lay chest to chest, the sweat cooling slowly as their breathing synced. "You're shaking," he murmured. "Because it's real," she whispered. He didn't ask if she regretted it. He didn't need to. She was curled into him like she'd belonged there her whole life and only just now realized it. She touched her lips to his shoulder again. This time, it wasn't a question. "Tom," she whispered. "Yeah? If I fall asleep like this, don't wake me. Not even if the world ends." He smiled softly. "If it does, we'll sleep through it together." And she did sleep, peacefully. For the first time in memory, Vira dreamt not of being hunted, discarded, or repurposed, but of being held, of a future, of something beginning, not ending. The next day dawned with no warning, no artificial sunrise, no routine tone from the overhead PA. Just the low, gut-deep sound of structural groaning as the dome's belly flexed under pressure. Tom was already up, seated at the terminal, his eyes scanning diagnostic code. Something was wrong. Vera stirred behind him, wrapped in the blanket. She sat up, hair wild and eyes still soft from sleep. "What is it?" she asked. Tom didn't answer right away. He tapped another command into the console, frowning. The screen flashed red. Emergency filtration systems had gone dark on the north side. Atmospheric pressure irregular. One external processor offline. No inspection logs filed. "I think something hit the dome," he said at last. "Or someone did." Vira's expression shifted, calm sharpening into alertness. "Sabotage? Looks like it." He stood, grabbing his jacket, boots, and emergency kit from under the cot. Vira was already moving, the blanket dropping to the floor. She dressed quickly, movements precise. Survival had trained her muscles to remember urgency. "Do they know I'm here?" she asked. Tom hesitated. "Yes." She stopped buttoning her shirt. "How long?" "A while. They flagged your bio sign 2 nights ago. I tried wiping it, but someone must have routed it off-site. So they're coming? Not just for you. The breach isn't a coincidence. They're cleaning house." Vira's jaw clenched. "We don't run, not without a plan." "I've got one," Tom said, reaching for the wall schematic. "There's a secondary maintenance lift, unregistered on civilian logs. It leads to the drone launch shaft, Sector 9. No cams, low risk. And the exit? Unmanned drone dock. We trigger a recall override and hitch a ride on the next outbound." She nodded. "Let's move." They packed fast. Rations, water filters, emergency masks. Vira grabbed Tom's field jacket and stuffed it into her pack. When she paused by the cot, her fingers brushed the corner of the pillow. She turned, scanned the room, then looked back at him. "This place was the first place I felt safe." Tom didn't smile, but something in his face softened. "Then we make the next place better." They slipped into the corridor. Emergency lighting had reduced visibility to a red wash. Every shadow looked like a warning. The first checkpoint was clear. The second wasn't. A pair of security officers stood near the feed silo. Vera spotted them first, pulling Tom into a utility shaft just as one guard turned their way. She held her breath, pressed flat against the wall. Tom was close behind her, his breath warm at her ear. "If they spot us—" "I know," she whispered. "Wait for the pass." When the guards finally moved on, they sprinted the next leg in silence. At the service lift, Tom keyed in the override. The hatch opened slowly, the lift groaning with age and neglect. They stepped inside. The doors closed. "Once we're in the shaft, it's a 20-meter drop," Tom said. "There's no ladder. We'll have to free fall onto the drone gantry." Vera raised an eyebrow. "And survive? Cushion landing. I rigged the shock pads last month. Was supposed to be a maintenance test. We'll hit fast, but soft." The lift stopped with a jolt. They pried open the hatch. Beyond it, the shaft yawned open like a throat. Vera didn't wait. She climbed out, glanced down once, then dropped. Tom's heart stopped until he heard her grunt and roll safely onto the platform below. He followed. They landed hard, but intact. The drone gantry was quiet, sleek delivery machines humming softly in their cradles. One blinked green. Vira approached the terminal. "This one's unlocked." Tom climbed up beside her. "You sure?" "Positive. I've worked drone wiring before. These things don't care what species you are, just whether your weight won't fry the inertia buffer." He laughed despite himself. "Never thought I'd be rescued by your understanding of drone dynamics." Vera's eyes narrowed in a grin. "I'm full of surprises." They climbed into the drone's cargo pod and sealed the hatch. Inside, it was cramped but clean. Tom linked into the navigation system, rerouting the destination to an unlisted orbital med station in the outer fringe. Small, private, and sympathetic to people like Vira. As the drone launched, the pod shook, then steadied. They were airborne. Vira sat back, exhaling for the first time in what felt like hours. Tom reached over, threading his fingers through hers. "You're free," he said. She looked at him, not smiling, not crying, just there. "And you're with me." He nodded. She leaned her head on his shoulder, closed her eyes and said, "This time, I'm not running away. I'm running towards something." Tom kissed her temple, the stars beginning to shimmer through the viewport. "Toward us." The med station in the outer fringe wasn't built for beauty. It was barely a station, more like a drifting medical lifeboat bolted together from surplus modules. But for Tom and Vira, it was sanctuary. After the drone docked and auto-reported their arrival, no one questioned their presence. The facility's AI confirmed no outstanding warrants, and its decentralized governance meant that what people didn't ask often mattered more than what they did. Tom used his credentials, still technically valid in fringe systems, to register Vira as his research assistant. It was a lie wrapped in enough truth to stick. She didn't protest. She understood the value of camouflage now, not just to hide, but to live undisturbed. They were given quarters on the far side of the med ring, 2 stacked compartments and access to a private garden dome, overgrown and half forgotten. In the soft violet light of the biolamps, Vera thrived. Her skin regained a richer blue tone, the dull gray that had clung to her under Agridome's recycled sludge, washing away day by day. The silver freckles across her shoulders began to shimmer again. She moved with a quiet grace now, not the skittish, braced-for-pain flinch of someone expecting to be punished for existing. One evening, 2 weeks after their arrival, she sat in the garden dome barefoot, toes buried in warm soil. The plants were synthetic hybrids, genetically stabilized to grow without full-spectrum sun, but they smelled faintly of mint and damp leaves. Tom watched her from the doorway. "You're doing it again," she said without looking up. "Watching you?" "Yes, I like watching you." She turned, a slow smile curling at the corner of her mouth. "I used to think being looked at was dangerous. Now it's different." She stood and walked over to him, slipping her arms around his waist. "You see me without turning me into something. That's rare." He kissed her forehead. "You are something, just not what they said you were." Vera hesitated, then looked up. "I've been thinking. That's always dangerous. I want something more permanent." Tom stilled. "Permanent?" She nodded. I want to reclaim the thing they said I couldn't be. A future, a choice, a family, with you. A beat passed, then another. You mean, I'm pregnant, Tom? The words hit like air rushing into a vacuum. He didn't move. Vira's voice softened. I know it's sudden. I know we didn't plan. But the med scans confirmed it this morning. My biology's strange, but the growth is stable. For now. He reached out and cradled her face, his thumbs brushing tears she hadn't realized were there. You want this? He asked gently. I want this, she said. Not to prove anything, not to replace anything, just to build something that's ours. He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. They stood like that for a long time. Later that night in their quiet quarters, Tom sat at the terminal, not working, just watching the stars drift past the viewport. Vera curled beside him, her head on his lap, a blanket tucked around her knees. She was humming, a Lorellan tune he didn't know the words to but loved all the same. Do you think the station will let us stay? She asked softly. For a while, long enough. And after, we'll find somewhere quieter, somewhere green, maybe a small planet out on the rim. Humans and Lorellans both settle there now. Vera was silent a moment. Then, what will we name them? Tom blinked. Them. I said the growth is stable. I didn't say it was singular. He laughed, an actual full laugh, the kind that sounded alive. Of course it's twins, or triplets, or an entire revolution. Vira smiled and closed her eyes. Then we'll teach them everything we never got to learn. Love, safety, worth. He nodded, voice low. And how to recognize truth, even if they have to build it from mud and memory. Outside the viewport, a nearby star pulsed with the slow, steady light of promise. Tom looked down at Vira, alien, wounded, radiant, and finally whole. He thought back to the first moment he saw her, curled in mud, whispering her shame like a sentence. Don't touch me, she had said. I'm dirty, useless, shameful. And now she was the center of everything he believed in. Now she was home. And the life growing inside her wasn't proof of purity or utility. It was proof of love, of choice, of survival, not just from something, but towards something. Together they had rewritten the ending, not with power, but with gentleness, with time, with truth. Forever began here. The air in the garden dome was thick with warmth. Artificial though it was, the filtered breeze carried the scent of life. Herbs from the vertical beds, tangy citrus from the dwarf graft trees, and the faint earthy aroma of nutrient-rich soil. Somewhere overhead, the dome's artificial sun dimmed into the soft amber of simulated afternoon. Vira sat cross-legged on a woven mat near the irrigation trench, her fingers dusted with loam as she teased a sprouting leaf free from its tangled curl. She wore a soft ivory tunic that brushed her knees, her long, crimson hair braided over one shoulder and streaked with pollen yellow highlights from the flowering vine she'd leaned into earlier. Across from her, Tom was kneeling beside a shallow planter bed, sleeves rolled to his elbows, hands caked in damp earth. His expression was focused, but peaceful, like the quiet work had smoothed away the tension that used to hang between his shoulders like an old injury. A tiny sprig of green peeked out of the soil he'd just tamped down. Tom, she said without looking up, your rows are crooked again. I prefer to think of them as organically expressive. She smiled, not bothering to hide it. The basil doesn't thrive in expressive chaos. Neither did I. Look how that turned out. She tossed a small clump of soil at his boot. Try again, researcher. He leaned back on his heels, laughing, and let the sun-baked silence stretch between them. This was the rhythm they'd grown into. Not one of endless survival, but of companionship, of knowing the pauses in conversation were as sacred as the words. She turned slightly, pressing a palm to her belly. The faint curve was visible now beneath the fabric. Not much, but enough that her balance had shifted. Enough that Tom instinctively reached out when she moved, even if she didn't need the help. You're staring again, she said, half teasing, half serious. I always will, he replied simply. Vira didn't flinch at that anymore. Instead, she reached for his hand, tugged him toward her. He came easily, kneeling beside her now. His palm rested gently over hers, both covering the gentle swell beneath her tunic. "Feel that?" she whispered, a faint flutter, so soft it might have been imagined. But Tom's eyes widened. "They moved," he said. Vera nodded. "They've been doing it more. I think they recognize your voice." He blinked, then chuckled softly. "Poor kids. They'll be born thinking sarcasm is a primary language." "They'll be born knowing safety," Vera murmured. Her voice trembled at that. Not from fear, this time from awe. He leaned forward, kissed her temple, then the tip of her nose. Her eyes fluttered closed. "Tell me something you never thought you'd get to do," she said after a moment. He thought, "Braid someone's hair." She raised an eyebrow. "You've never braided anyone's hair." "Only my own, during field assignments when I didn't want it burned off in sterilization. But this—" He reached over and gently took a strand of her long red braid between his fingers. "This feels like a ritual, not just grooming, like I'm part of something ancient." Vera tilted her head against his shoulder. "In my culture, braiding was a bond. Mothers to daughters, siblings before trials, partners before journey. So, if I asked you to braid mine, I'd be saying I claim you." He smiled, "Then braid away." They stayed there side by side in the growing dusk, her fingers weaving slow, deliberate patterns into his hair. Not perfect, a little messy, but each twist a promise. They didn't talk much after that. They didn't need to. The dome lights dimmed on a timer, and the sky above them flickered into a simulated starfield. It wasn't real, but it was beautiful. Later, they curled together on the mat beneath a blanket Tom had dragged out from the living quarters. Vera pressed her back to his chest, her fingers tracing slow circles over his wrist where it rested on her stomach. "What if they grow up thinking this is all normal?" she whispered. He kissed her neck. "Then we've done something right." Outside the dome, the stars blinked in gentle silence. Inside, two hearts beat in sync, steady, grounded, alive. It was just one day, a quiet day, but it was theirs.